Hey, I'm Damon, bringing you perspectives from the Christian left, and we're going to talk about some Christmas sermons today. We're at the end of December, right after Christmas. Apparently, Trump heard a sermon on Christmas mentioning refugees, probably went in one ear and out the other, as we see what he said the next day. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some other Christmas sermons, and how I wish Christians will be in the year 2019. My vision for the new year of what I want the church to become. I know, super big, crazy talk, but come on, I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. He had radical faith. I'm trying to have radical faith too this year. Anyway, so let's talk about this story first. Donald Trump and Melania Trump went to the Washington National Cathedral, a liberal Episcopal church, to hear the Christmas sermon on Christmas Eve, given by Bishop Marion Edgar Budd. And when I first started seeing headlines about this story, I saw these headlines about Trump was present in a sermon that talked about refugees and talked about evil emperors, and I'm like, whoa, this preacher must have went all out. And then I looked at the actual transcript and listened to the actual message too, and no, she didn't really go that all out. She just told the Christmas story, but it's like, the Christmas story involves these things no matter what, so they're all technically right. But let me tell you exactly what she said concerning refugees and our present time. And this was towards the end of the sermon. She says, "You only have to read the first sentence of the story to know that there are deep social implications to it. Should we place ourselves in this story, it begins with an emperor who could move people about at will. And so two people, Mary and Joseph, forced to obey the emperor's edict, set out on a long journey on the last month of the young woman's pregnancy. And they were denied a place of comfort in her greatest hour of need. And it wouldn't be long before they would be forced to flee again, this time to find refuge from violence in another country. It's right there. It's in the text. It's in the story. And those who passed it on to us wanted us to know Jesus is no stranger to struggle or sorrow or the whims of human cruelty. They wanted us to know, as they did, both the gift and the responsibility of tending to light shining in darkness. We are now the ones to keep the light shining. We are the ones to keep the hope alive, the message of love credible, and that is no small task." Yes, the message of love. I want to keep talking about that, and I want to mention some other Christmas sermons that mention this. But first off, yeah, that's all she basically said, and I'm sure some people, when they heard that, were thinking, I hope Trump, saw a bit of irony there. And the next morning on Christmas Day, he had a little press conference in his office, and he just went on and on, once again, with his wall nonsense. So, in one ear, out the other. And, I mean, it's pretty believable. I'm sure plenty of you out there have sat through sermons that you just completely ignored. It's really easy to ignore every word of a sermon when you're sitting there because your mind is everywhere. Now I'm going to go through some other sermons, and this is all building up to something, so stay with me here. Now I also want to talk a bit about Bishop Michael Curry's Christmas sermon. The leader of the Episcopal Church also got super famous and a lot of publicity from preaching at the recent royal wedding. And that sermon was all about love. And this sermon, once again, his whole shtick, all about love. But he also mentioned refugees. And he talks about seeing an old Episcopalian poster that talked about being a help to all European refugees and comparing them to Mary and Joseph. And the poster's tagline, referencing Mary and Joseph, said, "In the name of these refugees, help all refugees." And then Michael Curry says, "God so loved the world that he gave, even to the point of risking his own son. And in the name of those refugees, and in the name of that Jesus, help all refugees, all people who suffer, anyone who's alone, everyone who's in need. That's what love does." And then in Justin Welby's sermon, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the leader of the entire Anglican Church, he also mentioned refugees in his sermon, a different group of refugees. And he also, in the whole sermon, was talking about the language of God's love and what it actually is and how that's revealed in Jesus. And I wanted to read this quote. He says, "God's language of love is exclusive. It requires us to forget other languages of hatred, tribalism, rivalry, political advantage, and of materialism, pride, greed, and so many more. Like, the language of love is so powerful that we cannot hold on to it and hold on to these other languages of hatred, tribalism, rivalry. That's how powerful this love that we're talking about is. It's not just, oh, mushy, nice. This is some hardcore love, because it is extremely difficult to love in the midst of hatred. Have you ever had to forgive someone that wronged you so deeply and screwed up your life? It's extremely difficult. And I hate when people talk about the theme of love in Christian language as if it's all just mushy and nice and weak. No! Like, you know how hard it is to love, to commit to someone, to say, I'm going to stay committed to this and choose to love you in the midst of craziness, in the midst of hatred, in the midst of great pain. That's the type of love we're talking about here. And now lastly, I want to read a bit from Pope Francis's Christmas sermon. And I love how right at the beginning of this sermon, he talks about greed and materialism, which he's given plenty of sermons about. And he says, an insatiable greed marks all human history, even today, when paradoxically a few dine luxuriantly while all too many go without the daily bread needed to survive. And I thought that was amazing, because that's extremely similar to a line in the beginning of Karl Marx's The Communist Manifesto, where he says, all of history hitherto is the history of class struggles. And of course, Pope Francis isn't a Marxist. Plenty of people have criticized him, calling him a Marxist, but in reality, he just kind of sounds like one because he's Latino, and plenty of Latinos have faced the struggles that Marx discussed when he talked about the struggles of the proletariat. So the Pope just went on in his sermon talking about turning away from materialism this Christmas. Now, I'm talking about all these things because it's making me kind of go crazy with these thoughts that, shouldn't this message of Christian love be so powerful that if you were to sit in a sermon where someone talks about it, you couldn't ignore the social implications? You couldn't walk out of that church and still live a life of hatred and rivalry and bigotry? That's so badly what I wish Christianity actually was today, and what I wish sermons did every single Sunday when someone came to listen to one. There's unfortunately too much fluff in some cases, and in other cases, it's just a message of global capitalism disguised in priestly robes. Like, so many have forgotten the true radical nature of this whole thing. And also in the sermon Trump heard, the preacher quoted this from the mystic Howard Thurman, saying, "Celebrating Christmas affirms our solidarity with the whole human race in its long struggle to become more humane and to reveal the divinity in which all humanity shares." Imagine if that was actually true. That's so beautiful and awesome to read and to hear. But so many people don't actually feel that way when they celebrate Christmas. And yet, it's like this holiday came from the Christians. So Christians, I think, need to fight way harder to make Christmas this. Not just a season all about presents, not just a season where we try to guilt trip people into remembering Jesus, but a season where we're reminded to be in solidarity with all the suffering in the world. A season where we're reminded of the greedy and materialist few who have so much more wealth than the lowly and downtrodden suffering that experience poverty every day, just like Jesus experienced poverty throughout his whole life. A season where we're reminded, if you're gonna take this stuff seriously, if you are going to take Jesus seriously, if you're gonna take God's love seriously, then you have to go all in, embrace it all so much that you can't remain a hateful, bigoted, stupid, racist, sexist jerk. Any of those qualities will have to be removed from you if you are to fully embrace this love thing. They can't exist within the same spirituality. So that's what I really wish Christians will take hold of this coming year, 2019. Go back to the root of this whole thing, to the life and teachings of Jesus, and really pay attention to the social implications. Really pay attention to what Jesus would actually do today. That's what I'm committing to, and I'm going to also spend the rest of this upcoming year talking about stuff from a perspective of Christian leftism, because I think it's extremely important. I think Christians need leftists, and leftists need Christians in order for both to really survive and really have an effect. We'll get more into what I mean by that as we keep making videos, but thank you for watching this one. Like if you liked the video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you later.